you go.
Yeah,
You're live.
I hope so. I'm going to check at least Facebook and see if I really am.
That's a good plan.
Yeah. So far, I really like Restream.
I've never used it.
I hadn't before either, but it streams to three formats all at once.
Nice.
And then, yep, we are live. Yay.
Yay.
Then I
Hello.
can go in, and download the recording, the video, and the audio separately. And then I can upload them to TikTok and to Instagram. And
Nice.
it's so much easier.
Mhm.
So welcome. This is Breaking the Silence, conversations on addiction, grief, and healing. I think I said it backwards, but whatever. And this is episode 6 already. And we have Kathleen Shepard today. And you guys will just fall in love with her. She's amazing. And I'm just going to turn it over to her. You can read the bio in the details, and just we're just going to let her tell her story.
Oh boy. Hello, everybody. My name is Kathleen, and I am known best, I guess, as Kathleen, your personal cheerleader. I started as that person during COVID, and it's really the epitome of the story of my life. I have been a cheerleader for many since probably I was born. So, um, my backstory: I was raised in a family where my mother was extremely verbally aggressive with me. She was very physically aggressive with my brother. Um, I always felt I was the oldest, so I had to protect. I had to protect. I had to protect. And there's really nothing you can do when you're little to protect somebody else who's little. And so I've carried that a lot in my life. I married a man who wasn't really good provider, but personal, it was very difficult for him. And as the marriage progressed, I got feeling smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And in 2017, when he left after 37 years, I was lost, absolutely lost.
That's a long marriage to just walk out.
And that's all I'd ever known. I got married when I was 19.
Wow.
So that's all I'd ever known. I was going to be married 65 years because, I got married at 19. I could make 65. And it was going to be it was a big milestone. And for the longest time, I sat in grief, even just thinking about that. And it's maybe, compared to some griefs, but it was my whole identity. I lost my entire identity the day that he left, because for a couple of reasons. He decided that a clean break was a good idea. Have since talked about it only a tiny bit, but a clean break was a good idea. So it was a break from his entire family.
Oh,
And
wow.
his dad was one of 12. So there were many, I was going to say thousands of cousins, but many cousins, and it was just like this. No, we're done. So you're done. Yeah. It was like my life had not existed.
And none
Totally.
of the family had a problem with that?
Some did. I have many cousins of his that I am friends with on Facebook. His sister is now back because she just became a new grandma, and so we have some things in common. And so his sister is back, chatting. My son lives in the same city as my mother-in-law, and so she's at dinner quite often at my son's house. And so,
Oh, good.
so that things have changed. When Grandpa passed away, things really changed with her. Grandpa and I never really saw eye to eye very much. Um, Part of the small was I'm this big, bold personality.
Yes, you are.
I am not a tiny little person. And in my marriage, it was be quiet, don't say that. You have to engage your mind before you put your mouth in gear. And be careful. We don't want to lose dad's inheritance. We can't do anything to lose the inheritance. And you've got to like mind the right. And so I walked the line. I walked a really nice line. I was really good at it. Terribly miserable. But I would still be married to this day if we hadn't have separated, because I'm a long-term stay for all the good stuff. But that smallness when I first was out there, I remember I rolled over. We separated in May, and I rolled over. My mom passed away 6 weeks later. And I rolled over sometime in July, and I looked at the wall and I went, so is this my life? Because it was like, ooh, I don't know. But the thing that changed it, the absolute thing that changed it, I started every day, what am I grateful for? And this is going to make me cry. Because when I first started, all I was grateful for, only I could come up grateful for my kids and my grandkids. There was nothing else. I couldn't
But
find anything else.
but those little tiny things, those things that you can find, and then it keeps you open to see more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in 2017, when he left, I was training for Ironman Arizona. And so, for those of you who don't know, in American, it's a 2.4 mile swim, it's 112 miles on the bike, and then just a little marathon, 26 miles at the end of that. And
Where do you swim in Arizona?
Tempe Lake, Tempe Town
Okay,
Lake,
all
in the
right.
slough, in the slough,
Okay.
in the sludge, with some
Yes.
twigs and things.
Yeah, natives, we don't swim there.
No, it's only used for triathlons. But so I was training in 2017 to do that. Um, 3 weeks before we separated, I fell, and we just bought a little property in California, and we're getting possession of it. And I missed a step going down and twisted my ankle really badly. When I went to the hospital, they said, "Oh, did you hit your head?" I said, "No, no, didn't hit my head." So nobody talked concussion or anything. And then about a week after we separated, I was teaching my granddaughter how to turn from front to back on skates. Landed on my tuchus on the ice. Again, did you hit your head? No, no, no. But I saw stars. So, no, okay. So no talk of concussions. About 3 weeks later, my friend had fallen at work and hit her head on a log. And she was posting symptoms of like her symptoms for concussion. And I'm like, check, 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 check. Anyways, so whiplash concussion.
Oh,
So I go to
yes.
the doctor, and the doctor says, well, you'll do nothing for 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, okay, but I'm doing this. I was doing a half Ironman in July. So that this happened probably about the second ish week of June, maybe. No, let's see. I'm trying to think of the timeline because he left in May. I had the second concussion. It was probably the first week of June or the last week of May or something. Anyways, and I was doing this race at the beginning of, so a half Ironman is half of the distance, as I told you
Right.
before, 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and then a little half marathon, 20, 13 miles. Anyways, and so it's a funny story now. This is cool. I like this. I can tell it without having tears and things. Anyways, so I said, yeah, I said, okay, 2 weeks. And I said, what does that mean? He says, no screens, no movement, no, I said, I can't run. No, I can't swim. No, you can't. I said, but I'm training for this Ironman, and I kept going. I'm doing this half Ironman, but I'm doing this half Ironman. My marriage ended, my life ended, the whole, everything's done, and I got to do this.
Right.
Because it was the only thing that stayed constant. The Ironman training stayed constant. And so, anyways, long story short, I made 13 days and then I hit the pool. Well, it was way too soon. I've had other whiplash concussions since. I had one in 18, one in 19. But because of where my life circumstances were, I just didn't feel like, I thought if I let go of that thread, I would go down into the depths of mess and I would never get out.
Right.
Never get out. So, interesting story, driving from Vancouver Island, so I'm in Canada, Vancouver Island, all the way to Edmonton, Alberta. So I had to go all the way through the province of BC and in halfway through the province of Alberta. So it's about an 18-hour drive. And I get on the highway in Vancouver. So you cross on the ferry, you get into Vancouver, and then you drive to Kamloops. Kamloops is 4 hours from Vancouver. And I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, my car has lane departure, and all of a sudden it's beep 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 beep, beep, and it like startled me because my brain had like shut. It shut
Oh,
down just for a second.
no.
Just for a second, I didn't fall asleep, but it was like, the synapses weren't synapsing, and I mean, I was under a tremendous amount of pressure. Anyways, so I pulled over on the side of the road and had a little talk with myself because it's like, well, you can't die going to this race.
Right.
This is not the best thing to do. So anyway, so I had a talk with myself and I said, okay, I was halfway. halfway between. And it's a big mountain pass. It's called the Coquihalla Highway, and it's a big mountain pass. And I'm like, okay, I can turn around and go home and admit defeat and not do the race. That didn't seem like a real viable option. Or I can drive for 10 minutes and then stop and shake my head and open the windows and walk around the car and go do another 10 minutes. And that's how I got to Kamloops for 2 hours every 10 minutes. When I think of that woman, I think of the chutzpah and the resilience and the strength that it took to do that, because I had nothing right then. Really had nothing. I remember loading the car. There's a picture of the back of the car, and I have it all loaded for the trial, because you got to take your bike and all your run gear and all your swim gear and your wetsuit and whatever. And so I arrived in Edmonton, and as I started the story with my mom and I didn't have the best relationship, shall we say. I didn't talk to her from 1988 to 2013, so not the best relationship.
Oh, wow.
Well, when my 6-year-old daughter came home and started telling me rude things that grandma was saying, my husband put his foot down and said, you know what, I'm sorry, but you can't go to grandma's.
Right.
And so we stopped all that. But anyway, so we had moved her out to Vancouver Island because her health was not the best. And so I thought, well, I'll call her after the race and tell her about it. Because if I call her before and I'm in a pretty big puddle of mess anyways, she's going to say, why are you doing that goddamn stuff? You shouldn't be running at your age. And she'd go on and on and on. And she's a very negative woman about everything. And so, for everybody, not just me. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do the race. So I get up and I do all the things, and I get to the race site. And of course, my mind is really not in a very great place. And I get there, and you have to wear a number on your bike helmet.
Oh, yes.
And I get there, and I have no number on my bike helmet. Well, I go into panic mode. Well, you can't do a race if you don't have a number on your bike helmet, right? It was such a focused little something. And a gal beside me, she says, well, don't you have a special needs bag or a bag with all your clothes in? I said, yeah. She says, good, take the number off that, put it on your helmet. Problem solved. So little tiny things that are so big when your head is a mess.
Right.
Someone else can say a little something. And I have had so many people with little somethings that have said things to me over the last 8 years. So that was one of them. The other thing that happened at the race was, I'm like, well, how am I going to get my wetsuit on? For those of you who don't know, a triathlon wetsuit it's a bit like getting Catwoman into her suit. And it takes a village. It's not something, it's a very intimate experience. I'm very large chested. You have to pull the wetsuit up and over, things.
And you're being timed.
Well, no, not to put the wetsuit on, but you have to have it on before the race starts, for sure. So anyway, so I'm like, well, what am I going to do, right? I'm here by myself. And anyway, so triathlete people are very, very kind. And so I found a group of women standing around, and they helped me get into my wetsuit. It didn't fit the way that it was supposed to, but at least it was zipped up and I was ready to go.
It worked.
That's right. So I went and I did the swim. Swim is my favorite part of a triathlon. I love to be in the water. The cold water feels so good on your face, and I'm swimming. I'm doing my thing. I come out of the water. I get up to my bike. I get on my bike. I go out on the bike, and there's lots of rolling hills in Edmonton. Rolly, 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 rolly. It's two out and back. So you go out and then you come back and then you go out and you do it again. And I'm going out on the second one, and I'm like, wow, not many people out here. Like, not many people coming back, because I was having a very slow day. My brain was not exactly in a great spot. And so I thought, okay, well, that's all right. There was this gal in a pink outfit. I passed her. I was so excited. Pedaling on. But they were literally putting the cones away as I came in. So I was the last person off the bike course.
Oh,
last.
wow.
Yeah, my goal in triathlon is always not last. I have osteoarthritic knees and really probably shouldn't be doing this. Could have listened to that person that said that, but no. F you, no way, not listening. But anyways, so I'm coming in, and then I remember this policeman. I'm coming up the last bridge, and they're all behind me collecting the cones as I come in. And there was this policeman, and he looked at me, and he said, as I rode by, he says, "Geez, you have nice legs, honey." And my regular person would have had a snappy comment like, "You asshole." Right? And I'm like, thank you very much. I'm nearly dead, but I'm going in. I'm riding in, and all the time, and I know now what it was, but I didn't know then. But I used to get this feeling in the back of my head, like my brain was oozing out all over the back of my shoulders. I know now that's a migraine. for me. That's
Oh, yes.
what a migraine feels like. So I had an incredible amount of pressure in the back of my head, and I'm like, shoot, what am I going to do? Should I talk to the EMTs? If I ask them, they're going to say you should go get this checked out at the hospital. And but my daughter had driven from Calgary to come and support me at the race, which is 3 hours away. And I'm like, she's going to be waiting at the run turnaround. So you do 6 miles, and then you do another 6 miles. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? She won't be there yet. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to go out on the run on my own. I'll just go out on the run. It was a poor little gal. They have lovely little volunteers when you get off your bike and stuff. And because of my knees, I often need help to get my leg up and over the bike. Anyway, so off she goes. She helps me out and gets me off the bike, and off I go. But I'm bawling my eyes out, and she had to help me get my shirt changed. I'm, I'm telling this 15-year-old my entire life story. Anyway, so I go out on the run, and I do the first circle, and I'm coming in around the corner. There's a corner before you go out on the next one, and I'm like, well, two choices here. I don't have enough time to finish the race because I was having a bad day at the office, and you have to meet time constraints. I said, I can, say to my daughter, hey, hi, how are you? Let's go run through the finish line over there. I said, or I could go out and do as much as I can.
Right.
And the person inside of me, I'll go out and do as much as I can. They'll bring me back in a golf cart. It'll be fun. Right. So anyways, I come around the corner. This part always makes me cry. I come around the corner, and who's sitting on the hill but my son, who had driven 3 hours from Lloydminster to come up with his 6-year-old son and my daughter. They're both sitting there. Now, my son's quite athletic. My daughter is not. She's running. Oh, Mom, that's gross. She's pretty. Anyway, so I come in, I collapse on the ground, big hugs, big tears. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't have enough time. My son looks at me and goes, well, Mom, what do you want to do? I says, I'm going to go out and walk it. I'll walk till they bring me back in. Because, it seemed like I had to, at the beginning of all of this mess, I really felt like I had to finish something.
Right.
I had to finish something. And so anyway, Chrissy's my daughter, says, okay, Mom, let's go. She had on her runners, thankfully. Usually she's in 3-inch heels. So off we go. And we ran. It was smoking hot that day. We ran all the shady spots, and we walked all the sunny spots. And my 6-year-old grandson thought it was a hoot because he got Coke at all the aid stations.
Oh.
He didn't get Coke when he was 6. So he thought this was a hoot. So we made it probably, I don't know what this, I want to say, because it would be 6 miles. 6 miles, so 3 out and 3. We probably made about 2 miles because I'm trying to convert it to American for your audience. Probably made it 2 miles, and then the golf cart was there, and they said, well, what do you want to do, ma'am? We can give you a ride back, or you can run it back. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to run it back. So I ran it back. I crossed the finish line. There's a lovely gal there, hands me my medal, gives me my T-shirt, and I whisper in her ear, and I says, I really didn't finish. You should finish to get the T-shirt. She says, honey, you were out there longer than anybody else.
Oh, how sweet.
But a lot of things with that race, my son coming, because his mom needed somebody. And the story gets more interesting because after the race, we'd gone for dinner, all the kids and I, and I thought, well, I better phone Mom and tell her how it went. I phone and there's no answer. So I go to my friend's house. I was staying overnight because I was going up to my son's cabin the next day, 3 hours away. And I phone again. It's like, well, that's weird. She must be out in the bistro getting a banana. So I tried a couple more times that night to call and no answer. So the next morning I leave my friend's house in Edmonton and I'm driving to Saskatchewan, and it's like 3.5 hours to get up to the cabin at the lake. And I about halfway up, and my brother phones, and he says, I'm going to take Mom for lunch. I says, well, give her shit. She's not answering the phone. And anyways, and so he's no worries. 5 minutes later, the care of the place phoned. We went in to do cleaning this morning, and your mom was still sleeping.
And nobody
She
checked.
passed away while I was doing the race, apparently.
Wow.
So that on top of the other 6 weeks, and I mean, I didn't have a close relationship with my mom, but she was my mom. And, I got lost going to a cabin that I'd gone to many, many, many times. Because my brain was I had no business being on that road.
Right.
For those of you people who are listening to this and who have been through something super traumatic And if your brain or your body is sending you messages, you don't have to be that strong.
Yes.
Because, I planned my mom's funeral on a deck with the internet was terrible up there. So I'm underneath the thing trying to talk on my phone without it, planning this funeral. And it was, I had to be awake because my ex-husband got possession of his new house July 6th. My race was on the 2nd. Mom passed away. I was up at the lake on the 3rd, and he got possession on the 6th. And there was no way I could be home and watch all my life leave my house.
Right.
I couldn't do that. We had packed, we'd gone through every cupboard, every drawer. It was very amicable. He just wanted out. And before I'd left, and so there was a room full of stuff, and he knew what furniture he was taking, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So, gosh, this is going to be a long story, actually.
We're good.
So, well, it's an evolution. It's an evolution of something. So I managed to get home from that race, and I'm still training for Ironman Arizona. And I'm like, boy, my head was like a mess. Every time I ran, it just like, because whiplash concussions are because your brain has gone goo, goo, goo in your head. And so every time I ran, my head, it's like, oh, good Lord, how am I going to do this? And so my daughter had flown in for the race. It was in November, right by my birthday. My daughter had flown in for the race, and so she was there. And long story short, I went to enter the swim, and I remember standing on the railing, and there's a really cool picture on my Facebook where I'm like this, wow, yay, right before it started, because it was a big deal to do an Ironman. And I get to the edge and I go, I'm scared. And not once in my life have I ever been scared going into the water.
Right.
Not once. And that set the tone for the whole day. Basically, I got out of the water. I'm at the cutoff time because it'd be rare if I'd have to be drowning, or I don't know what it would be to miss the swim cutoff. But I get out on the bike, and it's 3 circles of 37.5 miles. And I knew at the top of the first circle, so 18 miles in, that was it. I was going to get pulled. And so both my daughters had written me poems. You have this thing called a special needs bag, and you put in stuff halfway through the bike and the run that will maybe help you for the rest of the whatever.
Oh, yes.
And these letters were in my special needs bag on the bike. And so I came in on the first round, and I gave my daughter a big hug, and I said, I'm not going to finish today. She says, I know, Mom. She says, but it doesn't have to be today.
Right.
Okay, cool. So anyway, so I forced myself. I did the same kind of thing that I did with the when I drove to Kamloops, because my head was messy, but I wanted that letter, because they throw everything out at the end of the day. I wanted that poem that my daughters had written. And so I went out on the bike for the second loop, and I stopped every 500 pedal strokes. So I counted 500, and I'd stop. I'd hold my head. I'd put my head down. A policeman stopped. He says, "Ma'am, do you need some assistance?" I says, "No, I'm going to get my letter." So again, stubborn. Oh my God, I'm so stubborn. But it meant something to me when I came in on the bike, because I only did 2 circles. So I came into this huge cheering crowd. I've never finished an Ironman bike in the light. It's always dark. You know what time it gets dark.
Oh, yeah.
4:00, right, in November. And I'm never in. You have to be off the bike and running by 5:30, and I'm never in early. No, let's not be early. Anyways, long story short, I came into big cheers, and my daughter and I went out for dinner, and the next morning I signed up for 2018.
Nice.
So 2018 going to be my day, going to be my race. And so I had a great training season. I went to the race. It's like, yep, going to do this. This is all really awesome. I get in the water. It's colder than frick. Man, it was cold. 54 degrees.
Yeah, November's freezing out there.
Yeah, for an hour and 45 minutes. There were people, I heard afterwards, there were people in the tents afterwards, the med tents, because they were hypothermic. I'm not a skinny little gal, so I had lots of, and I wore clothes under my wetsuit. I had on a t-shirt, I had on socks in my booties. I was like prepared, because I'm from Saskatchewan and we swim in water like that.
Right.
But the interesting thing about that race, because I'm going to wind the story faster forward, but the interesting thing about that race was that when I was getting ready to go into the swim in the morning, the prelude to this. Sorry, there's a prelude to this. I had a friend, Pat, who is my favorite running buddy, and she passed away in September.
Aw.
She passed away in September, and I ran with her. She was a superb runner. And, I just kind of toddle along behind. And, as long as I could see her, I was like, okay, she's helping me get faster. And she always had such kind words to me, stay on my heels. If you stay on my heels, you'll get faster. You will get faster. I'm like, oh, yeah, right.
Aw.
I hate running. Absolutely. I know why now, because I have osteoarthritic knees. But anyway, so we're running along. And so I get to the race in the morning, and I'm like, I had sat down the night before, and every mile, so every 20 for the 26 miles of the run, I had a little piece of paper I was going to hold in my hand, and I was dedicating every mile to somebody who had helped me get there.
Aw.
Because it's a pretty arduous journey. It's a lot of training. I was training 25 hours a week for this big deal. And so I thought, well, I got to do this. Anyway, so I get to the race, and 5 days before the race, I'd cut a bagel and taken it out of the microwave when it wasn't quite thawed, and I'd gone like this with the knife. 4 stitches.
Oh
And I
my.
remember the nice doctor. He didn't speak much English. He was quite Slavic. No water. 10 days. I'm like, well, what about a dirty slough in Arizona? I'm sitting there crying, going, oh my God, my whole race. What am I going to do? I've trained for this for years. I'm ready. Like, let me go. Anyways, I thought, no, I'm going home. I bottled it, and I said, I'm going home. I'm going to talk to my triathlon friends. They'll tell me what to do. So I had liquid Band-Aid on it. I had a waterproof bandage. I had waterproof bandage wrapped around it. And I swam to the far left so nobody could touch my finger. That was the plan. My swim was about 8 minutes longer than regular, so I figured I had the plan work. But before I started the race, I'm walking. It's dark because you have to be there about 5 in the morning. The race starts at 7. So, and then you get into this corral of athletes. There's 2,500 of us. So you want to be in the place. You situate yourself as to how fast you swim, and so you want to get to that corral so you can get to your number early. So I was probably 5:45 or so walking, and it's dark, and I'm walking along, and there's this young fellow walking beside me. And I'm like, oh, and he says, good morning. How are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I'm good. Yeah, it's a good day. I'm going to do a race. And I says, well, what are you doing here? He says, oh, I'm here to cheer people on at the finish line. And I says, wow, that's really cool. I says, if you were cheering for me, you'd have to be here till midnight because you have till midnight. That's the cutoff. You get 17 hours to do this fun thing. And so he introduced himself, Jordan, and he says, well, I'll be at the finish line. I'm like, well, that's really cool. He'd asked me my race number, and I said, that's really cool that you come. He was a university student, come and cheer people on. And so anyway, so I do my swim. I come out of the swim. I get on the bike. Everything's going like I had a plan. My coach had said to me on Monday before the race, she said, write out your race report exactly as how it's going to go, just like you finished it. She says, and then you read that 3 times a day. Now, that's a really good advice for anybody that's faced with a really cool life decision is to write it out how it's going to go. Right. Read it, how it's going to go. And boy, it's a great manifester.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, well, the swim went the way it was supposed to go. I get on my bike and I'm off doing my bike. And I knew I wanted to do the bike in 7.5 hours-ish. So 2.5 hours a loop. And I said, as long as I'm in before 2.5 hours on the first loop, I'm golden. I'm going, and I got this, right? So it was 2:15 on the first loop. I'm like, okay, I'm finish this bike. This is really cool. And I'm really excited. And I'm riding around, and I get my special needs bag, and I'm doing my thing, and off I go, and I finish. Anyways, I come in on the bike, and I wanted to be running at 5:30 because that would give me I want to be running by 5. I think I wanted to be running by 5 because that would give me 7 hours on the run because I'm more of a shuffle than a runner. But anyways, yeah, it was 5, I think. Anyway, so I get out, I look at my watch as I'm running out of the change tent, and it's exactly 5 o'clock. And I'm like,
oh wow,
ooh, I'm gonna finish this. That was the first time I'm like, ooh, I think I could finish this thing, because my whole entire day for that day and the weeks leading into it was F the naysayers. I really have trouble saying that other word, but F the naysayers, because there were so many people who said, you can't
clears
do
your
this.
throat chakra.
Does it? Yeah, I'd do it.
It's one of my favorite words. It's one of my favorite words. It's a noun, it's a verb, it clears the energy in your throat.
Well, thank you. I'll practice that on when we get off. But anyway, so I had, it was F the naysayers. And, part of the reason for the 26 people on my list was like, look at all these people. And it was really just my ex-husband and my mom who were the naysayers in my life. And yet I took their energy and I ran with it my entire life.
Right.
Because, those are the people that disapproved of what it was, that who did this, all of this, who I am. And anyway, so I started the run, and I was running 5 minutes and walking one. I think that was my plan. And anyways, the first 4 miles went really well. I stopped at every aid station. I had a sip of Gatorade because I'd practiced drinking Gatorade on my bike. Now, for anybody who's an athlete, what do they tell you? Don't try anything new on race day. Well, it wasn't new because I tried it on my bike and it worked pretty good on my bike. So I thought, whatever. Well, good Lord. By mile 4, the stuff was slushing around in there and it was really messy. So I had some problems from mile 4 to mile whatever. I met my coach about mile probably 12 because you get your special needs bag at mile 13. And Angie says to me, she says, Kathleen, are you eating? Are you drinking? I says, yep, 1 sip of water and a grape at every aid station. 1 grape. She says, well, you're going to have to eat more than that. I says, I can't because I can't get out of the bathroom. I see. Anyways, so I get to my special needs bag and I'm gluten free. So I had made a peanut butter and honey gluten free sandwich the night before. So it had been sitting out in the sun all day in my special needs bag. I had a root beer in there because root beer is my favorite drink. And anyway, so I grabbed both of those, put all the nutrition I had in there in my hat under my whatever, and took off. And I thought, God, I should throw that sandwich away. It looks gross. It smells gross. I don't think I could eat that. But Angie said I have to eat some. Well, I took a bite of that sandwich, and Angelique, without a word of a lie, it's the best thing I've ever eaten in my entire life. The honey had crystallized. It just was nirvana. And I think it probably saved my race. Probably saved my race.
That honey and protein probably gave you a really good boost.
Yeah. Because when I got to mile 10, so I had 16 miles to go, I'm like, oh God, I'm not going to finish. Like this the time I could tell by and I'm a human calculator when I'm out on the course. It's like, I was doing 16-minute miles. And so 16 times 10, 160 minutes. Oh my God, I've only gone 157. So I knew I was going to be finishing at 17 hours and 2 or 3 minutes at mile 10. And I just knew it intuitively. It's like, well, it'll be a finish, but it won't be a finish because you have to have 17, less than 17 to be an actual official finish. And so anyway, so I get out there and I'm running along and I get to the halfway point and then I get to mile 20. And that's the big thing because there's a cutoff at 10:30 at night. It's a hard cutoff. Doesn't matter what time you started the swim. It's a hard cutoff, 10:30 at night. If you don't make it, they give you a ride back in a golf cart. You've been out there for 15 and a half hours and I'm sorry, but you can't. I'm just going to take you back there. And so anyways, the guy there he was before the golf cart. He says, ma'am, you've got about 30 seconds. You got to go before I hit that thing. And I'm standing there and the old me kicked in and I'm like, I'm cold, I'm tired. It's dark. Is this the worst thing that could happen? I don't know. And then I went, no, I'm crossing it because I knew it was 2 more hours. Six 2 more hours because I was so tired and life was a mess. So anyways, crossed it. I don't know. I've never looked at that time, but I don't think I crossed it with more than 10 or 15 seconds to spare. But at that point, I knew I was definitely not going to be an official finisher because I needed 2 more hours and from 10:30, I had till 12:17 because I started the race at 7:17. So I had 17 hours from there. Anyways, I'm running along and then this nice fellow comes up behind me about mile 20 and a half, 21. And he says, oh, are you having a hard time? I said, I'm having a terrible time. So we ran together or mostly walked, but some running between mile 21 and 22. And then there was this lovely gal on a bike at mile 23 and she rode with me the whole entire mile. And she gets to mile 24 and she turns her bike around. I'm like, oh, where are you going? I could use a little help here. She says, no, I got to go get another one. There's 2 or 3 behind you that are going to make it too.
Oh,
okay, this is cool. So I'm still calculating. At this point, I'm doing 18.5-minute miles. So, that's not really a run. It was a shuffle. I was moving, but it was not much of a run. And I get to mile 24 and my coach from the year before when I did 2017, I did it with a charity and the coach was at mile 24. He says, Kathleen, just 2 17-minute miles. You're going to make it. You're going to make it an official time. 2 17-minute times at miles. And I'm looking at him. I go, Brad, scratching my ear. I'm doing 18.5-minute miles. I says, I'm going to be 17:03. I'm okay with that. He says, no, just 2 17-minute miles. And I can remember moving my arms faster because I figured if I moved my arms faster, my legs had to go faster. I'm like, you know, so I come around the corner at mile 25 and I'm like, I can see the lights. I can hear the music. I can hear it, like it's loud, it's bright. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm finishing an Ironman. F you, F you. And mile 26 was dedicated to Pat, my friend who'd passed away. And so I'm like talking to her, and I've been talking to her all day, to be honest. And I'm like, Pat, I'm going to get in there. 17:02, I think. It's going to be 17:02. And of course, the last mile isn't a mile. It's 1.2 because a marathon is 26.2 miles.
Yes.
So I hadn't calculated that into my calculations, but that's okay. So anyways, I get running along, and I'm running along, and there's like this person walking towards me. I'm like, who the hell's out here at midnight walking down the road? Seems kind of odd. Anyways, the person comes up to me. Well, who is it but Jordan from the morning?
Oh,
Yeah, my young little friend. And he says, Jordan, what the hell are you doing out here? He says, I've come to run you in. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, he's really tall and lanky, and one of those young men with the pants that are like 9 sizes too big, and the underwear's hanging out the back. And the
right.
Anyways, so he tucks his jacket in his pants. And off we take off running. And I said to him, I says, Jordan, I says, when this is over, I said, I mean, you just made my day. I said, I'd love to, send something to your mom. Like, can I text her or do something and say something nice to your mom? He says, oh, my mom doesn't have a cell phone. Okay, no worries. So anyways, we're running along. And then he goes, Kathleen, stay on my heels, girl. I'm running you in. Ding, 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 then a ding, ding, ding later. But anyways, ding, 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 ding. So I'm running along. At the halfway point, about a half a mile out, the Smile Train girls were there. So I had raced with this company called Smile Train, who gives surgeries to kids all around the world for cleft palate and hair lip.
Oh.
And so I'd raised $4,000 to race on their team. And anyways, so the 3 Smile Train girls are there. So now there's 5 of us running Kathleen into the finish line. And of course, I hadn't looked at my watch. I knew it was 17:02, 17:03. I'd been happy with that since mile 10, 4 hours before, 5 hours before. It was a long time before anyway. And anyways, I get to a quarter mile out, and Angie's there, my coach. She says, Kathleen, you're going to run like you've never run before. I'm like, what? You've been out here almost 17 hours. And you want me to do a sprint? She says, yeah, because you'll get an official time. You've got time. You can do this. She's like looking at her watch, and really good coach. So anyways, so I had planned, because I'm only going to cross the finish line of an Ironman once with my knees. I had planned, I'm going through that finishing chute, and I'm going to high five everybody. I'm going to walk through. I'm going to sing the songs. I'm like, this is a big deal. Well, I ran like the wind. I've seen the video. It's on my Facebook page in case you want to see it. November 2018. I've seen it. It doesn't look like I'm running like Ben Johnson or any of those other fast sprinters, but man, in my mind, 100 miles an hour. I high-fived a gal with blue hair. It was Heather Jackson who won the race, because the pros come back and greet you as you finish, which is really
how cool.
Yeah, really cool at midnight. So I high-fived her, and I high-fived Mike. Oh God, I've lost his name. But he's the guy that announces, Kathleen Shepard, you are an Ironman, as I cross the finish line. So I crossed the finish line. I collapsed into my friend's arms on the other side, and she was supposed to be racing with me, but had a breast cancer scare in the summer, so wasn't able to race. And she had raised enough money with Smile. She raised like $10,000 or something. So she had earned a free Ironman jacket. And she had texted me in July, and she's like, I can't do this race, Kathleen, but I want you to have my jacket. What size are you? And so we'd been together for the pre and the pre-race and stuff. And she says, when do can I give you your jacket now? And I'm like, hell no, I want it when I finish. So she had it at the finish line for me and handed me my jacket. And Jordan was there, and Angie was there. And Angie says, Kathleen, I've coached for 20 years. That's just the most emotional finish I've ever seen. Well, it turned out that my time, now I was doing 18.5-minute miles. And I had to do 1.2 to finish. So whatever math that is, 20 some minutes that I needed to get to my 17:02 or 17:03. My time was 16:58:50. I had a minute and 10 seconds. I can only imagine how fast I had to have been running, at least a 15-minute mile, maybe 14, to do that last mile. Now, how does one do that and pull that out of themselves?
At the end of the day.
at the end of the day, and as it turned out, so we after the race, we sat around and had some, because they had pizza for the finishers and whatever. And I mean, I was one of the last ones, but there was still pizza. It was cold, but whatever. I don't eat pizza, but Jordan looked pretty hungry, so I gave him some pizza. And as we're walking away, as we're walking back to, so my friend Lisa and I were walking back to the car. I said, it suddenly my brain clicked in. I went, I got to go talk to him. How did he know Pat's words? I got to go talk to him. Well, of course, he was gone. So I get up to the room and I'm texting with my daughters, and I have one naysayer daughter and one really positive daughter. And I guess they had texted through the entire run. She's going to finish. No, she's not going to finish. She's going to finish. No, she's not going to finish. 7 hours. They'd both been online tracking me, watching me do this, right? So I'm talking with the really super positive ones, and she says, Mom, is he real? And I'm like, well, there's a picture. So, and I know his name, but we'd been sitting after the race, he and I and Lisa, and I'd said something about, I'd really like to stay in contact with you because, you saved my race. Basically, you got me into the finish line. So I didn't have my glasses. So I handed him my phone, and he goes, he says, okay, yep, I'm on your Facebook. Passing me back my phone. So I'm checking this. It's like, well, there's nothing on my Facebook. You have to actually ask somebody to be your friend. He doesn't go on your phone and say he's your friend. Anyways, so I was going on a cruise after the race, and anyways, I found him on Facebook because I'm a retired lawyer. I can, I know how to find people. And anyways, so I found him and I sent him a friend request because I said, I just got to talk to this young man. Like, what is this? And so anyway, so I asked him, I says, like, how did you pick me first? 2,500 people. Like, how do you talk to? And he says, well, I had a dream and God said you needed me.
Aww.
And I'm like, okay. Because I mean, Pat was there all day long. And then her words were there at the finish. And, so, really tough thing, but it's still one of the best experiences of my life. And, you fast forward through, 1920, then I had to sit on my bum for 18 months with COVID because I wasn't in one kid's bubble because I was in the other kid's bubble. My daughter over here in Vancouver had a baby, so I'm back and forth on the ferry all the time to help her with the babies. So the one where I lived with the 3 kids that I'd grown up with me, I couldn't see them because I wasn't in their bubble. And the sadness that comes when you're a grandma and you can only see your kids on a grassy field somewhere or in their backyard was extremely difficult. But I think the whole process, I didn't talk about the blue door because that was a big turning point. All my gratitude stuff, because it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually I would say to myself, I'd say, I'm grateful for this person because, and you add another layer to the, I'm grateful for this smell because I was out running one day and I saw a blue door. And I knew that I'd made it into abundance because it's like I see stuff everywhere now.
Right.
See stuff everywhere. And the last year I've been diving into that dark side because I'm this happy, sunny, bubbly, nothing bothers me kind of girl. Well, underneath all that happy, sunny, bubbly, there's like other stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what's really made such a difference. Because now I'm a whole person, right? I don't have that inside turmoil. The insides match the outsides, and when you can get your insides matching your outsides,
right,
what a heck of a thing that is. So I had my daughter say to me, we go tubing in the summertime down this river, and she's a bit skittish about the river, and her husband is very brave. And the girls squeal and I squeal, and it's a lot of fun because sometimes there's currents that take you over. Oh, there's a trig over there going, oh, that's going to ram my boat. So anyways, we're going down the river and we're all squealing, we're having a good time, and she looks over at me, she goes, Mom, what have you done with my mother? Who are you and what have you done with my mother? And I says, well, I don't know, but it's such a slow evolution because I used to be skittish and scared and afraid, she's quite skittish and scared and afraid. And I said, well, James brings students down, he's a teacher. He brings students down this river. He's brought the girls how many thousands of times? I've come many, many times. Has anybody ever had a problem? I said, I trust James. He knows how to steer. We're all rafted together. He knows he's got a pole. He knows how to steer us away from that, sharp tree that's going to jab somebody in the eye. But it was really interesting because that's you notice as you go along little somethings that's with your healing.
Yes.
My relationship with my son, he's going through the messiest divorce in history, I think. And, I go there and there's peace and there's ease, because peace and ease comes from me.
Yes.
And so I just notice little things that are so different from that very, very, very broken bird of 2017. She was very, very, very broken. And I don't think I'm broken anymore. I think there's more healing to do, because I think there always is.
Oh,
Something's
yeah.
gonna trigger me. This stuff does. But I know now that the sun comes out,
Yes.
and I hold on to that. It's like, oh, okay, well, if I'm gonna cry for a week, that's okay, because there's something going on. Let's dive in. I'm curious,
Right.
super curious. And so, grief comes in many forms. I read a really good something somewhere, and they likened it to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's nice calm water and everything is good. The grief is still there, but there's nice calm water. Sometimes you're in the middle of a freaking tsunami
Yeah.
and there's no way out. Sometimes I can remember going, I can't breathe. Am I ever going to get out of it? Like I'm just taking my last breath, because the emotions were so raw and so
Right.
whatever. I don't have that happen anymore. So there's you can move through.
Yes.
You're never going to be the same person,
No, absolutely not.
right? You've lost children. I can't even imagine that. Like that,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like my grief is this tiny little something.
But it's not. I mean,
It's
grief is
grief.
just part of life.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I
and
have a really good girl. Oh, go
there
ahead.
are so many types and levels, and everybody's is individual. You grieve similar situations differently, or you grieve different people differently. My sons were two totally different types of grief,
Yeah.
and just because of the different relationships that you have. But
That's
there's
right.
grief all the time. It's just part of life. Any loss or perceived loss.
Yes.
And that's what I've really gotten a clarity on. And I've learned just recently, I've been going back and going through the grieving process from my younger years that I never did, because I didn't know, because nobody talks about it. Nobody teaches you about it.
Oh,
It's not
exactly.
normalized,
No.
but
Well,
it's
I
just
thought every kid lived in a house like mine,
right. Well,
you know?
when I was 16, I lost my foster sister and we were best friends.
Oh,
And that was the first, I lost my grandpa at 12, but he was old. So it was just kind of normal.
yeah.
But when I lost my 18-year-old foster sister to a motorcycle accident, and 90% of the time I would have been on that bike with her, that's rough.
It hits you right where you live,
But
doesn't
I
it?
didn't know how to grieve. I
No.
just went on, and nobody said, oh, you need to cry or you need to process this. Those were just things that weren't talked about
No.
at
No.
all.
You're right.
And so I have gone back,
Oh,
because
good.
I didn't even remember that until just recently. My oldest daughter, I said, I have a hard time. I want to support my kids as much as possible because they've lost three siblings in less than 2 years. And I said, but it's different losing my child than it is losing your sibling. She said, but mom, you lost a sibling.
Mm-hmm.
She was only your sibling for a short time, but she was still your sister.
Yeah.
And so I had to go back and think about, oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And that was a big eye opener. It's like, oh, yeah. And then I lost my dad 7 years ago, but they lived in a different state.
Yeah.
So when you go back to normal life, then the grief comes in moments or in waves,
Yeah.
because you don't have memories on a day-to-day basis. You just, like, I walked in to pick up food for delivery at a Mexican restaurant, and there was a walker. I turned around with a bag, and there was a walker just like my dad's.
Mm.
I
Memories.
got to the car and just bawled my eyes out for about 5 minutes and
Yeah.
okay, and then went on, with my day. Or there's songs, and my dad sends me feathers and roadrunners, and
Yep.
my boys take over my playlist on my radio. And,
Yeah. My
know,
my dad, I think, said it best to me because he was palliative for 6 weeks before he died. He had congestive heart failure, and so either he or my stepmom were beside him most of the time, or one of my brothers or my niece. There was always somebody with dad.
right.
And he says, I'm gonna die. He says, and they've always said, this dying's hard work. he couldn't leave until Sharon, my stepmom, was okay with him leaving, and so he held on a really long time,
Oh,
and
wow.
because well, she wasn't ready yet. She wasn't ready. The day she said she was ready, he passed away the next day. But anyways, but he said to me,
What?
he says,
What
Kath, you
else?
have to. He says, don't you cry when I die. And I'm like, Dad, I'm crying now, but he says, no, no, don't you cry. He says, celebrate. He said, celebrate every memory. Tell people about me. Tell people every day something about me. And I think that's the best piece of grief advice I've ever been given.
Yes.
Because my son does the same thing. He talks to his kids about his grandpa.
Yeah.
Because he used to go on road trips with dad, and dad let him drive his vehicle when he was 14, and all these special little memories and stuff. And he talks to his kids all the time about grandpa. And it keeps, like, dad's here with me
Right.
all the time,
Absolutely.
all the time. And for those who are, for the grief is sticky for, and it's, you're stuck, and you're so sad all the time. If you just look up or look around, well, as my dad said, maybe you want to look down. My dad had a great sense of humor. A great sense of humor. He was at my uncle's once. My uncle was a born again Christian, and there was 350 members in their church, and he told dad, well, if you don't get saved before you die, you're going to hell. And dad looked at him and laughed, and he says, Jerry, are you telling me only 350 people are in heaven? Well, that's bullshit. But sometimes he'd say, yeah, when I'm looking up. But yeah, great sense of humor. I inherited that great sense of humor. I had no idea till I was 60 that I had a sense of humor. No idea. My son is really funny. And I'm like, where did he get that from? His dad's super serious. He's an engineer and he's very serious. And I'm like, oh, I got it. I figured it out. I don't engage my mind anymore before I put my mind in gear. That's
Right.
not a philosophy that works for me.
Right. And sometimes, and that's like I told you before we came on live, I don't plan for these because I don't want that thought process and that, oh, let's be rigid and let's have an outline or a topic or
Yeah.
anything. No, I just want to come and have conversations because it's so
Yeah.
much more potent.
And I've made it, Angelique. I want to tell you, I have never told that Iron Man story without great tears at the end for Pat with Pat. I
Yay.
I didn't today. It was just this great friend helping another great friend do their thing,
Yes, because they're still here.
Well,
They're,
yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just
Oh,
in
I
a
think about
different
her all the
form.
time.
Yes.
I can't run anymore. It's very sad. I signed up for a half Ironman for my 65th birthday, and I was hoping I could get off the bike and be able to walk some of the run. That was my goal, was, swim, do the, and I don't know, my goal might be just to swim. I don't know that I can even do the bike, and I'm really sad. I'm waiting on a new knee, and I'm like, oh, I don't. I'm so sad because I just want to go out and do it.
We have to talk later about the Jesus
I,
package.
I know you have talked to me about these. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, yeah. My osteoarthritic bone on bone painful things. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, I've enjoyed this.
This has
It's
been
very cathartic, actually. And it's what it shows me, and maybe others, is that you can start from this really dark
fun.
place, have more darkness added to the place
Yeah.
usually for a while, and then you go, wait a minute, who am I? And who am I really? And
Right.
she's an amazing woman. I rather like me now.
Yeah, me too.
Huh.
And it's so cool to get, I talk a lot about grief being a portal back to who I am
Yeah.
because it really brought me into a deeper relationship with myself and a deeper spiritual connection. My gifts have become much stronger.
Nice.
And now I have such clarity about what I'm supposed to be doing. And my boys have told me, you will share our legacy and we will work through you because we couldn't finish it in our human form.
I see one over each shoulder. It's really
They
interesting.
are.
While
They're
you were
both
talking, it's like
absolutely.
that's really yeah. Yeah, you're
They
right about the gifts. The gifts get stronger for
they
sure.
hold me. They're right there all the time,
Nice.
and either they're walking beside me arm in arm, or they're holding me up some days, or some moments. But
For
it's
sure.
true, and they they both told me we will work through you,
Nice.
and
What
so
a
that
gift,
clarity.
you
I
know?
know it's
That's
so
a gift.
beautiful,
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
have a much better relationship with my mom now that she's on the other side.
yes, I'm sure. But then we also, we experience grief before we lose people also, like being estranged from your mom,
Yeah.
or when you have children that have become you know addicts, or if they have mental health issues, and I didn't realize it until this last year and a half. I've been grieving for 20 years because I love my children, and when you love an addict, it's fucking hard.
I think so. Yeah. For
And
sure.
so you grieve the parent that you thought you'd be, you grieve the child that you
Hope they'd
had
be.
expectations and what their potential was, you
Yeah.
know,
Could
and
they just make a better decision today?
exactly. And
I
for
feel you. I feel
years
you.
and
Didn't get
years
into that part, but I feel you.
years and years, I really believed that it could be a choice, but it's not,
No,
because
because they're gonna go their way. They
they came here to fulfill their soul contracts
yeah,
and learn the lessons that they agreed to.
yeah,
And that was their path. And I can't argue with that. And
no.
I am grateful. I got 38 years and 29 years, and they chose me to be their mom.
Yep.
How can I argue with that?
Nope. No, no. Just go forward, do the best you
Yep.
can when you can.
Yeah. And now they just haunt me and make fun. And my older one says, now I'm everywhere because I'm an angel. They're so ornery, even more ornery than they were in human form.
That reminds me of one funny story before we go. So my son had a really good friend when he was in high school, and we called him Big Ryan because he was a bigger boy, played football, and he didn't make very good decisions often. So they're probably 15, 16. And so I sat Ryan down and I says, I said, Ryan, sometimes you don't make big good decisions and you get in a lot of trouble with your dad, right? Oh yeah, yeah. His mom had passed away. So now I understand why he was making poor decisions. But anyways, and I says, what about if you think about like this? What if Mrs. Shepard was sitting on your shoulder, and every time you had a decision to make, you could just look over at her and just say, what do you think? He says, that's a pretty good idea. Like, yeah, well, try it and see how it works. So, anyways, he messed up, got expelled from school or something. So he's over, and I'm talking to him. I says, Ryan, I said, what happened? I said, did you talk to Mrs. Shepard? What did she say? He says, oh, I flicked her off. I just
I
thought,
didn't want to hear what she said.
that's so you. So you can offer to help people, but it's totally all
Oh
on
yeah.
them if they
Oh,
choose.
and
If they choose.
a lot of our suffering is self-inflicted because we believe that we should help and we should be involved, and they need to make the right choices and they need to make the right decisions. But I listened to the audio book, Loving What Is by Byron Katie, on the way here last week,
Hmm.
and reminded me, she talks about there are three types of business: God's business, which is reality, my business, and your business.
Yep.
And if I'm in your business, then who's minding my business? And I'm messing up your business. that God intended.
Yep.
And so we have to stay in our own business and let everybody else stay in their own
I
business.
found that super freeing because I
Yes,
didn't have to be in my kids' business anymore. It
exactly.
was so freeing. One of my coaches, oh God, probably 10 years ago, told me that, and I'm like, holy! You mean I don't? Holy! That was one of those monumental aha! Oh, holy cow!
Yeah,
Moments.
it is.
Yep,
And it's really
absolutely.
been huge for me, and going through it right now. And,
Wow. You
and the
can let
grief
go
too,
so much.
because I've stepped back from one of my daughter's chaos.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she doesn't like it that I don't respond and that I'm say, hey, no, this is not happening. Mom's not going to rescue. Mom's not going to be the safety net. I'm not going to agree with you. I'm going to tell you this is not what really happened because I was there or I was part of it. And you're not going to say things that didn't really happen to make yourself look better or
Right.
make somebody else look worse.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she cut me off, and I said, and I didn't respond, and I haven't responded for weeks, and I won't. It's and I was very proud of myself, but also very surprised that it does free you.
It does. Yeah, it
It
truly
doesn't.
does. And if they're
I
meant
was
to come
shocked.
back, they will swing
Yes,
around and
yes,
come back.
you will.
You know,
And
and as long as I'm open,
yes,
you know,
and
and
we
I'm
can
kind, then
we
you
can
know
do
the right.
energetic work at soul level and at higher
Yes.
self
Yeah.
level,
Yep.
and we can repair those relationships at an energetic level.
That's right. Yes.
So
Yay, we
I'm
spoke
like,
of this.
I can actually focus on me and what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm not focused on everybody else's business.
Absolutely. Well, anything I can do to help with that, I'm just like,
Yes,
woo, sparkle fingers, sparkle fingers.
yes, absolutely. Oh,
Well,
and
I
I'm
just think, you know what, there's so many people out there who are hiding, who are like, I wouldn't have been ready for somebody like me or you 10 years ago,
right.
right? I was doing work, but I was doing surface stuff. It wasn't
Yeah,
doing. And if we just you reach a little part of a little somebody, because whatever you're ready to get to, that's where you go. Whatever
right.
that tiny little something is. So for anybody that's listening, whatever that tiny little something is, reach out, grab it, talk
Yeah,
to somebody,
absolutely.
you know.
And that's the whole point of starting this podcast. And I'm doing the monthly workshops. The beautiful fucking mess is my workshop.
See, I wish I could say
Um,
that word. We'll have to
we will
practice.
work on that.
I can say
And
freaking. Yeah, I can, but no, not that other one.
that's so funny. Uh,
Yep. I'm too
you
pretty.
should
I'm
you
too
should do the
cute.
4 questions from the work on that on that thought process.
Okay, what
what
are the
what
four
is
questions?
um have you read Byron Katie's book?
Oh, long time ago, but that doesn't mean that it stuck.
She's like, the first one is it true?
Oh, yes. Yeah. There you go.
Can you be 100% sure that it's
Sure that
true?
it's true.
And then you do the what's the third
Oh,
one?
yeah,
I
because
don't
my
remember.
coach used to do this with me all the time.
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do the reframe. You
yeah.
turn it around, and so it makes you
Then I have to
see.
say the word? Oh, I don't know if I can.
No, you don't have to. But takes you through the steps of who
Yeah,
would
yeah.
you be without that thought or that belief,
Yep.
and are you okay with that?
Yep.
And so, not that you have to give up your thought or your belief or change it,
Yep.
but who would you be? And is that more true, or does that feel better
Yep.
than
I have
with
used the
that
word,
belief?
just not in casual conversation. I think there's always anger associated with using
That's funny. And who cares? I'm sure we all have our own
Yeah.
ways to
Yeah,
express ourselves.
that's right.
And
It goes back to my dad. Ladies don't speak that way.
right. Yeah. Well, see, I
My
was
dad was very British, nice
I
ladies.
was the very rebellious child. He was British and he didn't say that. That's funny.
There you go.
Because the
Cool.
Brits are
Well, I
really
have
good.
so enjoyed this. Thank you for letting me share
Yeah.
because it's
Thank you for
interesting to
coming.
share a story many years after the fact and go, oh, I share it differently.
Yes.
It doesn't own me. It doesn't
Right.
yeah, very different. So thank
The
you very much.
emotional
That's a great
attachment,
opportunity.
it changes.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what an opportunity. Thank you so so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And you have a wonderful rest of your day.
I will. I'm off to play bridge. So
Oh, fun.
gotta go engage my little mind.
I'm gonna go hang out with grandbabies and
Oh, fun. Nice. I'm doing that tomorrow. So all is well.
we'll
Cool.
talk
Thanks.
soon.
You betcha. Take care, honey. See you later. Bye.